he is always thinking about beer, I think. He just cares very deeply about it, and he's got this great mind that is very favorable to it, I think, right? Like he's got this very kind of analytical side to him that likes the science, likes perfection, but then he's also got this artistry and this creative side to him as well. I think that that's like the perfect marriage of personality traits for a brewer.
Yeah, well, I always grew up liking beer. My first taste of beer I really enjoyed. In high school, even though you're not supposed to drink, I would always choose beer to drink. I've never really been a hard alcohol drinker. My name's Matt Tweedy. I am the co-founder and brewing director at Tooth and Nail Brewing Company. When I went to university, I ended up getting a job as a DJ at one of the 2 bars in town, which happened to be a brew pub, and I got paid $40 in cash and 2 pitchers of beer to do the job. And that beer had a very different flavor than I was accustomed to. At the time, I was buying 12 packs of Wildcat Dry at the gas station, and then this kind of really changed my perception of how great beer can taste. In a period of my early 30s when I was trying to really kind of define what it is I wanted to do with my life, I was very interested in beer. I was working at a beer-focused restaurant, and I remember I was actually sitting at the Aylmer Yacht Club one day, very frustrated with some friends because I didn't really have any direction. And one of my friends said, well, why don't you just learn to make beer? And becoming a brewer was never an option in high school. When they talked about career paths, they didn't really throw that one out there. So I was literally drinking a glass of Hoegaarden on a patio, looking at the beer going, well, somebody makes beer, obviously, so why can't I do it? And from that second, it just clicked.
My name is Dayna Guy, and along with my husband, Matt Tweedy, we opened Tooth and Nail Brewing Company. So Matt and I met, we were working at a very beer-focused restaurant in Toronto. And so he was doing that job, and then he was going to school at the time, or just shortly after that. He was just kind of in that transition of trying to revamp, and then he went into brewing school at that time. So I met him prior to brewing school. In fact, I took him to the homebrew store to buy his ingredients for his first batch of beer. So there you go.
I remember the first beer I brewed very well. I had done a lot of research into brewing, and I was super stubborn about how I was gonna do it. And so I knew I was gonna make it from all grain. I didn't want to use different extracts and things like that. And I had bought a bunch of equipment, and I was gonna boil it outside and do a whole bunch of stuff in the kitchen, and nothing really worked out. And literally at the end of 14 hours of me brewing in my pajamas, burns on my body, there was enough grain on the floor I could have just pitched yeast on the floor and come back and had beer in 3 weeks, but I produced 12 bottles of beer and it was pretty good. I ended up being somewhat lucky in that I was put into situations at parties and beer festivals around some of my idols, and I kind of got the nerve up to go and talk to them and ask them if they'd be willing to take me on for a week or 2 weeks. And I was able to do an apprenticeship at Avery Brewing in Colorado. I then went to London, England, and I did a kind of a shadowing type stage at Fuller's. And then I went to Belgium and I did a internship at Cantillon in Brussels. And then I ended up in brewing school, and as a part of my brewing school, the final part, I chose to do a full 2-month internship. I did that at a brewery called The Lost Abbey in San Diego.
My name's Connor Lynch. I'm the head brewer at Tooth and Nail Brewing Company. Matt has a wealth of knowledge. He's traveled the world. He's tried the best beers in the world. He has a phenomenal palate, and he's worked in some of the best breweries in the world. So I I've had a blast working with Matt. He's easy to work with, and he's a great teacher. I really can't say enough good things about him. Matt's passion has definitely influenced me. I was passionate about drinking craft beer and brewing it at home, but he opened up my eyes to some of the styles of beer that I hadn't necessarily tried. He's been to Belgium, he's been to the Czech Republic, he's been to Germany, so there's a lot of cool beers and beer styles that he's introduced me to.
I think the things that drive him in the beer styles and the way he formulates recipes, I think the motivations behind those is just so centered around quality and drinkability and these benchmarks. It's not like about like what's trendy or what's sure we want to make something that's interesting and newer or innovative or trying a newer ingredient, but it always has this backbone of drinkability, of quality, of cleanness, and because that's the driving force, I think that raises the bar in the things that he produces.
The brewing process is really quite scientific and really quite complex, but in its essence, it can be really quite simple. We have to go through a series of processes to extract a sugar source out of those grains. First process is called mashing. Mashing is where you mix a known quantity of grains with a known quantity of water at a known temperature, and you allow those grains to sit. Processes that convert the starch of that grain into sugar, and so what you're left with is a sugary, grain-flavored water. What we do then is we run that through what's known as lautering, which is kind of like a filtration process. So we extract that sugary water and leave the grains behind, and we run that into a kettle. At the end of that process, we boil that beer. So it sterilizes what is now called the wort. It coagulates proteins, which clears up that beer a little bit. And that's also where we get to add hops and spices. Hops are a really awesome ingredient that we use in beer. It contributes both bitterness and flavor and aroma. So at the end of that boil, we've now kind of constructed an extract of grain that's been spiced with hops that we now want to ferment. We cool that beer down very rapidly, and we move that into a fermentation vessel, at which point we add yeast. It simply wants to reproduce and then eat sugar and produces carbon dioxide and alcohol. So you have a very sweet liquid that at the end of fermentation has removed the majority of the sugar, so it's much drier, and it's produced the alcohol level that we design, and it's produced the carbon dioxide level that we're hoping for, and then that goes into a maturation process. We have to choose if we want to leave that unfiltered or we want to filter it. We run it to a packaging tank, and then from there it goes into kegs or cans or bottles, and then out to you. Well, when I first decided to open the business, it was probably the same day that I decided to be a brewer. There was no question in my mind that I wasn't going to be in control of my own fate at some point. And so what was really important to me at that time was to get a lot of experience. So I didn't, come out of school and just be like, okay, we're opening a business. I didn't know how to do that. And so I spent about 3 years, maybe 4 years, working for other people, really trying to understand every facet of the brewing side of things, because I knew nothing about running a business, and that was pretty scary.
I feel like we felt confident that we had some skill sets that would serve us well in opening this place. My background and his background, we have a strong hospitality background. We both have a beer background. I had never worked in a brewery prior to this place, but I'd certainly been to a whole lot of breweries and toured them, and I worked in a very beer-focused environment. I think that gave us a lot of confidence.
Well, the name Tooth and Nail came to me in the shower. I was listening to a song that had the term tooth and nail into it, and at the time I was really thinking about what is it that I want to be known for and express. And so the name Tooth and Nail came about because the early craft breweries in the US in the late 70s and early 80s, they had to fight tooth and nail just to get like a bar owner to put their beer on tap, to get a liquor store owner to put their beer on the shelf. If it weren't for those people, we wouldn't be here today. Opening the brewery wasn't easy, but at the same time, it would have been a much bigger uphill battle if it weren't for them. So it's really a tip of a hat to all those kind of pioneers of the craft brewing scene. The first award ceremony we entered was the Canadian Brewing Awards in, I guess it was 2016. It was about 7 months after we opened the brew pub. And we actually won 4 awards at that ceremony, which was pretty exciting because nobody knew who we were, where we came from. It was kind of like the surprise in the audience that this brand new brewery in Ottawa had done this well. I would like to see people recognize Tooth and Nail as a place that they want to go. The beer is, of course, my passion, but I think that the hospitality angle that we try to promote every day is really important. We're hoping that if you want to come in and spend your money on that glass of beer, that you walk away having had a great time, that you were served with kindness and with fun, and that you enjoyed the environment and the music, and you want to come back and maybe tell a friend. That's how I'd like to be recognized in the community.
People come here to celebrate, people come here to mourn, people come here to shoot the shit, people come here for all kinds of reasons, and so for it to be a space that people feel comfortable to do all of those things is really important to us.
In the beer community, I would always like to be recognized as somebody that just pushes quality, and if that stands out above the rest, that'd be great to be recognized for that. I mean, I love beer so much, I made a career out of it. It is the ultimate drink and thing to do while you're socializing and chatting with friends. I mean, at the end of the day, that's really it to me. I think it holds a really dear place in my heart. I think I've made some of the best friendships of my life over a beer. I've probably resolved some of the biggest conflicts in my life over a beer. And I love watching people get together in the brew pub and hanging out for 2 or 3 beers and having a laugh. And it's, I think that the past couple of years have taught us how essential that is in our lives. And yeah, beer brings people together, and I think it always has and it always will. And I think it's the #1 thing that drew me to it.